Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, with the threat of cyber attacks being more palpable than ever before, and high-profile attacks and ransomware breaches plague headlines in our news feeds every single day, it's making cyber risk more tangible for individuals. And it's no surprise that, as a result, a Bloomberg analysis recently found that cyber expenses are now rising faster than overall IT spending. And as remote hybrid work shift more workflow to the cloud, I think we can only expect spending to increase. But I recently discovered a company called Insight Partners, and they are a New York-based VC/PE firm with over $30 billion under management. And they have a speciality in cybersecurity and data privacy. Notable investments in this space include everything from DarkTrace, Tenable, Armis, Veeam, OneTrust, Cylance, Recorded Future, and Aqua Security, to name but a few. And Steve Ward, Managing Director at Insight, is going to join me on the podcast today. And he's got a few stories of his own. He was formerly a CISO at Home Depot and also a member of the Secret Service, not to mention 20 years experience in cybersecurity, physical security, fraud and technology risk. Sounds like we've got more than a few stories there, doesn't it? Well, buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to New York, where Steve Ward is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Stephen. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Stephen Ward. I'm a partner at Insight Partners, and I am solely focused on cybersecurity investments.
So I've got to ask, Stephen, what's your origin story? How did you get involved with technology? Where did your passion for it come? And how did that collide with the world of cybersecurity? I feel there's got to be a story there, right?
Yeah, it's probably unconventional compared to other venture capitalists, but I didn't start out in technology. I wasn't one of those kids tinkering with computers when they were younger. I actually didn't really find my rhythm until later in life. And I ended up going into the Secret Service and was doing protection, standing next to the president like the rest of us, and ended up having the luck of a case come across my desk that I grabbed onto. And it was really one of the first cyber cases in the government. Back then, we didn't even call it cyber. We called it electronic crimes. And I ended up working with a criminal who ended up becoming an informant for us for about 3 years. And it was at that time learning from him what online crime was and fraud and hacking and all of that really I fell in love with it so much that even being asked to go to the president's detail, we called it the show. It was the thing that you really wanted to do when you joined the Secret Service. I actually passed it up and said, no, I'm going to stick with this cyber case. And I think there's something here. And I think it's going to become something. So little did I know then back in 2002, 2003, that it was going to turn into this. But that's really how I got into it.
Wow, what an incredibly cool story. Secret Service, working with a criminal. It's more of a movie than an origin story, right?
Yeah, maybe one day.
Who would you have play you? Who would you be your first?
Well, I was a lot younger then, so yeah. I don't know. That's hard and much more in shape. Maybe a more of a Matt Damon during his Jason Bourne days. How about that?
That sounds perfect to me.
Not Ben Affleck. Whatever we do, it's not Ben Affleck.
And of course, that path led you to Insight Partners, which is a New York-based VC PE firm with over $30 billion under management. But can you expand on that for the listeners and introduce them and set the scene to what you do?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's a New York-based headquartered venture capital firm. We are a global firm in the UK, also in Israel, and obviously here in the US, also on the West Coast. So look, it's a simple equation for us. It's finding incredible founders with amazing ideas with a hard focus on software. Those are the common denominators. Yeah, we're focused on investing in incredible people. We've got over 200 fast-growing software companies in our portfolio and really focused on that growth scale-up side of the house. Founders who needed that cash to to really grow their business and become incredible companies. And for me, being focused on the cyber end of it, it's just an amazing mission to be able to find incredible people that want to really protect our critical infrastructure, protect other companies. It's still, even from the old days, just an incredible mission, and Insight really grabbed onto that early on. We've got around 50 companies in our portfolio that are strictly cyber companies. Still think it's the largest venture capital portfolio as it relates to cyber companies.
And on the topic of cyber, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but last year, Bloomberg analysis found cyber expenses to actually be rising faster than overall IT spending. And as remote hybrid work shifts from more workflow into the cloud, do you think spending is only expected to increase further this year? Is that what you're seeing?
I think it will, but I think those numbers have to be qualified in a way of, we've been underspending in cyber for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So there's a catch up. Typically, the way we look at it is you can have cyber budgets, depending on the size of the company, the maturity of the company, what industry in there, but anywhere between 5 and 18% of an IT budget. That has grown, to your point, and referencing Bloomberg there, that has grown over the years, but there's still some catch up there. IT's had a huge head start from cyber. If you really look at back in the day when I joined JP Morgan out of the government, that was 2007. We were just starting to build what we now know today to be cybersecurity operations. IT's been around much longer. So I think there's a catch up, and we'll continue to catch up. I think the question is whether or not we should be matching it to IT budgets. I think down the road, we'll probably see that be matched more towards revenue and maybe overall expenses of a company, because I think cyber will eventually outgrow IT, not from a percentage standpoint, from a level of importance to be sort of separated. I think even listening to previous podcasts of yours when they talked about where CISOs report and things like that, I think you'll see a separation there, and you'll start seeing, okay, if our revenue is X, how much should it cost us to protect that revenue, to protect this company, not necessarily a subcomponent of IT.
That's such a good point there. And I think for a lot of business leaders listening, hearing the line that cyber will eventually cost more than IT and it will be bigger than that will wake a lot of people up. But for those people listening, what are the biggest cyber risks facing companies of, let's say, varying size and maturity, would you say?
Yeah, right now, no one's immune to the ransomware side of the house. Somewhat predictable. I remember back in the day, we used to say that eventually they'll stop stealing the data and they'll go more towards data destruction. And that is certainly what's happened. What really prevented that from happening early was our ability to watch where the cash went, the old drug days of follow the money. So crypto has made that easier, which has obviously made it easier to blackmail into paying, and no one's immune to it. You're seeing governments get attacked with it. You're seeing critical infrastructure from electric companies, healthcare, hospitals. It's across the gamut. I say that as far as the biggest threat. The counter to that hasn't really changed. It's still the ability to patch more quickly and close up those vulnerabilities. But you're seeing a huge focus on how we protect our data in different ways. And the blockchain that's behind crypto that sometimes challenges us on being able to anonymize where that money goes is also the ability for us to use that blockchain capability to protect the data that they're attacking. This is kind of an interesting intersect between those. But yeah, I don't think that crypto is going to go away anytime soon, as long as they keep getting paid, and as long as they keep making money, and as long as it's still difficult to track where that money is going. I think we're still seeing certain countries attack each other, and I think you see the public companies get caught up in that. So I think there's still the Microsoft, the SolarWinds, those larger breaches that have occurred that were state-sponsored. You're going to continue to see those challenges between the U.S. and Russia, U.S., China, Iran, countries like that it's just the name of the game right now, and it's happening across the globe.
It really is. And listening to you there, I was getting flashbacks of my previous days in IT from a former life. And I remember clearly the importance of patches and getting things and closing those loopholes, like everything you just mentioned. But getting stakeholders to agree to downtime for those critical applications and servers, etc., was often incredibly difficult. And I'm hopeful that that is changing now because the world is a very different place. But I'm curious, what are companies allocating, or where are they allocating their cybersecurity spend now?
Yeah, I think I'll give you two answers. One is a technical answer and one is a human answer, which I think is getting to your point around the relationships between the teams and all of that. But the obvious answer is cloud.
Yeah.
I think the number now is around 20 to 30% of companies have their data in the cloud. There are concentration risks there when everyone is putting their data within the big three cloud companies. But that's where the money's going. We still have 10-year leases with our big data centers, our on-prem data centers. That's not going to go away anytime soon. But over the next 10 years, it's logical to think that those traditional brick and mortar data centers are going to be obsolete. And you're going to have it with the Google and the Amazon and the Microsofts of the world. So that's the obvious answer. Probably the less obvious answer is there's a lot of spend going on into the people aspect. Say this, you see it a lot where there's a lack of talent. I don't agree with that. I think the world has amazing people and very talented people. There may be a lack of training for those talented people to get them educated on what we need to do in the cyberspace. But I don't think we should ignore the investment that is going into the people. Traditionally, what we'll hear is folks talk about salaries and compensation rising. That's an investment. You're investing in those people. You're paying them to be very good at their jobs. And I think you're going to continue to see that. We have to train these folks up so we are the best of the best as far as detecting these things and responding to them. And that really goes to the EQ side of the house. Major investments in the relationships between teams. You hear terms like shift left now. That's a big term that we're all using. Really, to me, that's simplistically just saying, I'm thinking about someone else before myself. And in the past, we didn't do that with cyber. We were just micro-focused on us and the cyber world and pointing out the bad things that are occurring and what we need to do to fix them. The shift left really means I'm being more empathetic to the app dev world, to the infrastructure world and the cloud folks, and saying, how do I help you? Like, how do we build security into the inception of an idea? And how do I get you to care more, to take a bit more ownership of security in your day-to-day? So maybe 5% of your hats could be wrapped around security. We could actually secure things in a bit more efficient way, which is what you're getting at around the patching and the old school days of us lobbing things over the fence saying, you didn't fix this or you didn't build this right. The shift left is, hey, let's be a little bit more empathetic to the folks that are really building amazing things. And let's maybe stop being such a barrier to progress in some ways and help you do your job more safely and more securely. In the Secret Service days, we used to say, like, I want you to be secure even though you don't feel it. Right? That's really what we want security to be. And we want cyber to follow that same thing of like, I want you to look around and be like, well, I'm not really sure this is secure. That's how easy we want it to be, even though you are very, very secure in that process. So I think you're going to see a lot more investment on that side.
I love that. And do you think there be changes towards training as well? Because traditionally there's been that annual compliance training where you get somebody to sit down for an hour when they're already incredibly busy and just hit next continuously for 60 minutes. There needs to be a different approach there too, right?
Yeah, I think there's companies, there's one in our portfolio, Immersive Labs, that's doing an amazing job where their focus is actually on training cybersecurity experts and conditioning them. There is a difference between sort of email awareness, phishing awareness training that you give all your employees. But I'm always saying, like, let's not forget about the Navy SEALs, right? They train more than anyone else. Let's keep those swords sharp. And I think we've got some room to grow there, but there's some really amazing companies out there that are training folks up outside of, let's say, a traditional university training. And I think that's important. I don't need you to be a technology expert to be an incredible cybersecurity person. We can train you in different ways. And I think we're really interested in that.
And as we record this podcast today, I've just started reading a book called, And This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends, which is an incredible eye-opener. I don't know if you've heard or read that book, but it's a great read. But I'm curious, what do you think are the most critical threats moving forward and where cyber innovation is responding?
Yeah, look, I think the data destruction piece is incredible. We've got some great companies in our portfolio, and we're looking at additional ones around how to federate data in a way that we call it sludge, becomes data sludge. It's really useless to them to encrypt and destroy. I'm really, really bullish on that end of it. There's been some great regulations around protecting data from a customer standpoint. Now I think we need to do a little bit of a shift of, okay, now let's actually protect it from the ability to be destroyed. Look, data is the new currency, right? I'm always sort of saying that. The crypto crews may disagree with me, but the bottom line is the data is what gets monetized, and it's extremely important, and it's extremely private to consumers. So I love the ability to federate that so it just can't be destroyed, which I think will really help with a lot of the ransomware side of the house. Crypto monitoring, look, I love it. I love the ability to for countries to be able to send money back and forth, from people to be able to send money back and forth to give them more control. But we're constantly looking at the adoption of that, and that's always the big conversation. And I may be biased because I'm a former government guy here, but you're not going to be able to do that unless you can monitor it. I think people drastically underestimate the billions of dollars that go to criminals every year via crypto. And we've gotten better on that. It used to be like 4 billion. I think now it's around 2. But following that money and having some control over that from a global standpoint helps prevent a lot of bad things from occurring. The drug or the weapons wars, things like that, where things can be traded and bought and sold without monitoring, is a dangerous world to live in. So there are companies out there now, startups out there now that are really tapping into that. Like, how do we monitor this? Where you still maintain a level of privacy for an individual, but let's not turn this into the wild, wild west here where money can go wherever you want it to in the world without any type of monitoring. There's a happy medium there, and I think we'll find that. Look, somewhat repeating myself on the cloud security side, but the innovation that we've had on cloud and storing data in the cloud, the SaaS side of the house, I love it. And it's changing the world. However, I do have a nervousness around taking thousands of companies and centralizing all of that data on a big 3, right? 3, 4 different cloud companies, that if something happens to them, what is the redundancy for all of these companies to continue to operate and not have single point of failures? So there's a bit of a resiliency play in there that I'm super interested in. And there's some great counters to that with other companies. So that question is hard. We could probably do a 4-hour podcast just on what makes me nervous and some of the innovation that counters it. But I'm positive on all of it. I have yet to see something come out from a technical standpoint that security specifically hasn't countered and said, okay, this is how we're going to keep that safe. We're just a little bit behind the 8 ball when that occurs. So it takes us a little bit to catch up.
Yeah, I think we've seen a few times already when just innocent downtime through a technical issue and how it can take down all the apps that we use from home. And it is a bit ruining that resiliency there and that single point of failure. But look into the future. Is there anything that excites you about the opportunities ahead and what your big focus is going to be around that?
Yeah, look, I've been a CISO for a long time and been on that operator side. And I think over the years, I've figured out that I've never heard a coach walk into a locker room and say, it's not a matter of if we win the Super Bowl, it's when. And sometimes security can get into that business a little bit. Really, really positive, not on where we're going, and also where we've been. Made some tremendous strides over the years. I remember being back in the days of 2002, 2003, of where we were then when credit cards were still in plain text. And now we're dealing with chip and pins. So we've made great strides. Where are we going to go and how are we going to continue to do that? you know, it might be somewhat of a basic answer, but I'm finding myself giving the same advice to founders, where saying, like, let's not forget to innovate on the basics. And I think the world is moving so quickly, and we're constantly jumping ahead to go, okay, there's this new thing, and I want to figure out how to secure it and protect it. And I understand that. But we spent years getting visibility into all of these networks and telemetry from all of these different systems. And I'm really, really interested in what we're going to do to aggregate that in a way for my peers from when I was a CISO, to say, here's what you need to fix, and here's the priority of it all. It sounds so basic, but we still miss that. You've got data centers that are saying, okay, these are the things that are broken within data centers. And now we've got cloud environments and SaaS and third parties. Security isn't as overwhelmed as it used to be, but our peers are. So we transferred a lot of those things that are broken that need to get fixed, those vulnerabilities or whatever it is, to our peers to say, go fix these things. And they're overwhelmed. So I think there's tremendous AI machine learning out there that we can apply to that, to the workflow and decision-making on what needs to get fixed first. We created the word priorities and pluralized it in a way. It's actually priority. It's supposed to just be one thing. Like, what's the one thing that we fix first and the one thing that we fix second? And how do we help them really get a better handle on it? I think security needs to do a better job adopting some of the AI that's out there that's being used in other ways on tech. And I think we're slow to do that. So super interested in that. Look, really, really interested on autonomous security. We're going that route. We're there. We're going to go there more between cars and drones. And I'm sure eventually we'll get to boats and everything else. But when you start talking about loss of life or the potential of it, when you get into the autonomous world, I think we need much more conversation around how we're going to secure these things from being breached, being taken over, and possibly causing accidents and things like that. So interested in that. And then obviously blockchain, nothing new. How are we applying that to security? Again, everyone else is applying it to other areas of technology. How do we get security to really adopt these things a little faster so we can keep pace with the innovation that's happening across tech?
And on behalf of startup founders, specifically around cybersecurity that could be listening today, what are you looking for from them at the moment, and how can they better appear on your radar and make your life easier? Is there anything in particular you can share around that?
Yeah. Look, I'm a people person.
Yeah.
So the first thing I do when I meet with founders is I typically don't allow them to talk about their companies. I want to hear about them. Like, I don't want to lose track of storytelling. Like, I want them to tell their story, and I want to have like a personal connection with them. Like, how did you meet? How did you come up with the idea? How did you come up with the name? Like, why is this idea better than others? Like, are you obsessed about this solution? Like, do you lose sleep over it? Like, I want to hear their journey and all about that before I get into, okay, what's the technology and how are you solving it? I think if we're not careful, it becomes a bit of a commodity service where you're bouncing through companies and through technologies. And I think founders will back me up on this. Insight's a bit different on that. Like, we want to hear your story. We want to hear about you. Like, you make up that company. So first things first, like, I don't want to move too quickly into, or don't move too quickly into the technology and the threats and the risks and the managing outrage up, space. Yeah. I think we need to slow down a little bit and actually connect a bit more on the personal side. If I love you, I'm most likely going to love your idea and your tech in some way. So I'm really, really focused on that. From a technical standpoint, keep breaking glass. Don't be cautious. Be brave. Put it out there. You're going to crack that nut in some way. We know it's hard. We're dealing with hundreds of founders, helping them in that journey. We're very, very patient around, okay, like, you're going to get there. You're going to get there. Let's do it in an organic way. But I love the aggressiveness of it. And I love the risk taking I think it's amazing. And look, if you ask me what my two kids, what I want them to do, Like, go be a founder, go take that risk. It's an amazing journey, and it just creates incredible people. So I think a lot of it is just don't lose track of, like, we're human beings and we want to emotionally, and the things after that will come, but don't move too quickly into the technology and sort of the risks and all of that. Like, remember that we want to connect emotionally.
Wow, it's an incredibly powerful moment to end on, and so refreshing to hear you say that as well. And as we've come full circle, and obviously we began with your story, and now I'm going to ask you, what was the soundtrack to that story, or was there a song, movie, or book that has inspired you or helped you along your career? What would you choose and why to leave the listeners with today?
Yeah, I'm going to date myself. I think it's from 1989. So what was I, a junior in high school? So this is really scary for me to say this, but I still have it in my end stand. It's The Cuckoo's Egg. Cliff Stoll wrote it. And it was basically like the first, what I would say, cat mouse game of catching someone over a computer. And it was an old school hacking book that everyone I talk to that gets into this business, I'm like, if you didn't read it, I'm not talking to you again until you read it, because it was one of the first. So yeah, I'll probably stick with that one. Music wise, I'm a big Drake fan. I know it sounds weird as a 49-year-old constantly listening to Drake, but those are my two.
I absolutely love that. And a message for any startup founders listening: go buy that book now before starting a conversation with
exactly before the meeting. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights today. I'd love chatting with you. I'd love to stay in touch with you and see how this journey progresses and how the industry is evolving. But more than anything, just thank you for sitting down with me today.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
So a big thank you to Steve for discussing the biggest cyber risks facing companies of varying sizes, from large-scale enterprises, growth stage companies and startups, and where companies are allocating that cybersecurity spend right now, and the new innovations that are beginning to disrupt the market, not to mention how the shift to remote hybrid work has affected cyber investment and indeed Insight cyber strategy. And yes, we did cover the most critical threats moving forward and where cyber innovation is responding. But more than anything, I think we could have spent an entire half hour or even hour just on Steve Ward's backstory there. What a great guy and a great story. But please send in your thoughts, questions, pictures to come on the show, whatever it may be, by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram @NeilCHughes. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. But that's it for today, so a big thank you as always. Hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow. I've got another cracking guest lined up, but thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.